What do I know? Not much. Probably no more than most of you in this room. I know that it's possible to recover from mental illness. I know that information is probably an important part of that process, and in particular it was for me. I know that if we collect information properly, that it can provide good outcomes for people, not just the reports that we create for places like AMHOIC and the national data sets, etc. What I don't know why people are so resistant to collecting information. One of the biggest things that I've come across in the 2.5 years that I've worked for Queensland Health is the resistance that I continually receive from clinicians on the ground, sometimes even team leaders, service leaders, executives, and that's a struggle because I see so much value in it, and I'm sure that most of us in this room also see so much value in it, and that's why we're here today. I was hoping that perhaps that we can learn together, and that we can learn that the collection of information can in fact facilitate recovery if it is used clinically and not just used to report information. And that's where we're moving towards in Queensland, and we've done a lot of work in the last couple of years. The paper that I'm presenting tomorrow is actually on the project that I worked on for a couple of years, and I continue to do some work in that area with consumer outcome measures. But it's about actually using the information clinically, because without using it clinically, there's no meaning. And I think one of the things that our clinical staff in particular struggle with is what is the purpose of us collecting this information? And if there's no purpose, then why would I do it? So, every day, the people out on the ground, they collect, but they don't know why they're collecting. Some people do. Try not to pigeonhole everyone, because we have some people that collect very well and they use the information very well. So we collect outcome measures, we do assessments on people, we collect, in Queensland we do perceptions of care, the service improvement activities. We put all this information into various different applications. Most of them don't talk to each other, which is another challenge. But I know that we're lucky enough in Queensland to be creating software that is enabling that information to come across and tell bigger stories for us. We have records. Why do we have records? We have records that tell us who people are, what they do, what they don't do, who their next of kin is. We use these records to create reports at local, state and national levels. We monitor KPIs that in most instances don't have a mandate and there's a challenge within itself. Again, we're very lucky in Queensland that with some clever marketing and with some executive support that our performance management framework, if it's still called that, is actually created a mandate of its own, and services are interested in the information and they're excited about it. We also use the information to benchmark, and this is not something that I know a lot about, but I know that it's about comparing services to each other. So we have a lot of reasons why we collect the information, but, there's a big but. Does the collection of information mean anything to our service users? I'm not quite sure it does. I'm not quite sure that we are at that process where we involve them in the collection of information. We ask people to fill in forms. We ask people to complete outcome measures. We probably don't provide enough information about why we're asking them to complete outcome measures. And in most instances, we find that people choose not to participate in completing of outcome measures. And I'm sure that there's a variety of reasons for that. So, do we involve people? And is it improving outcomes for them? And does it in any way facilitate their recovery? If we're not, then what is the purpose of collecting information? Yeah. Gaming of data. That's probably one of the biggest fears that we have in Queensland at the moment, particularly with ABF on its way, is that people will put information in just for the sake of putting information in, and that's scary. It's scary on its own. What do people tell me when I go out? I was in a fortunate position in the first couple of years. I've since transitioned into a new role, so I worked with outcome measures quite a lot. And we restructured. We got a new government, which was I won't call it exciting, but it shook things up a little bit. And I now work with perceptions of care. And when I was in my outcomes role, I got to go out a lot and talk to clinicians and team leaders a lot. And that was good because I got to feel what was happening on the ground. And people tell me that clinical staff feel like data is a compliance and administrative exercise, that they don't feel like it's important to them. They feel like they're wasting their time, and that it's more important for them to have conversations with people. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but one of the things that about consumer outcome measures is that we're asking people to have conversations with people. And considering that having conversations with people is such an important exercise, I struggle with why it's so hard to talk to our consumers about what the consumer outcome measure is and give them enough information to decide that they want to participate in that process. So it's a compliance exercise, but we want to talk to people, but we don't want to do something that actually asks us to talk to people. Sorry for all the clinicians in the room. I'm not bagging you. I'm sorry. I'm not a clinical. I don't have a clinical background, but I am studying psychology, so, maybe that will make me a little bit more wise as I go along. And it's not being used clinically. Okay, so that's the other thing that I use. We're not using it clinically, but we want you to use it clinically. So I think, and we talked about this in our session yesterday, we did a workshop yesterday, and how can we bridge that gap between getting people to say, yeah, we want to do this, but actually doing it. And it's a really hard thing, and I think we came up with yesterday there is no magic button. We were kind of hoping there was. Maybe we're working there. Maybe it's a slower process for us. Maybe it's something that we need to take small steps towards, and maybe we're finally starting to take those steps now. Maybe there was too much of a focus on the compliance side of outcome measures and to begin with. Maybe that's why 10 years down the track we still don't have what we want from outcome measures. But the good news is that with the help of AMHOIC and with teams in Queensland like the clinical improvement team and with everyone in this room from Australia and New Zealand and the different jurisdictions, I believe we're now working towards bridging that gap between using measures for compliance reasons and being able to use them clinically. There's some really good resources out there now. And I think the NOC review probably answered a lot of questions too as we went along. So how do we move away from the traditional service provider model to a more client-focused model of care, where the client is at the centre of their own care? I certainly don't have the answers. I think the thing that is really most important is that we take the messages back that we are involving people at all levels of their treatment and care, and consumer outcome measures and perceptions of care activities give us the opportunity to do that. So when people say, I don't think I've met a clinician yet that doesn't want their consumers to recover. I certainly would never say that is the case. Everybody wants their consumers to get well. That's why we're in the business. That's why they study so hard. That's why they go out and they work in this field. The problem is, I think, sometimes that we do so much for people that we forget that people can do for themselves. And I'm very grateful that during my own personal experience that people let me do for myself. Probably because I wouldn't let anybody do anything for me. But certainly during that process, I was given all the responsibility. It was put on my shoulders. If you want to get well, Lisa, then you have to do the work. And I still remember being given a depression and anxiety scale. And at the time, I did not know that I was being welcomed into this world of information and measurement. But I was like, okay, I can complete this, but why? And my psychologist explained to me that it was going to help me. Okay, sure. So I completed it. And it was really good because it actually identified some things that were going on with me that I wasn't willing at that stage to talk to her about. Because anybody who's been unwell will know that at stages there are some very interesting and scary thoughts that go through your head. And sometimes you don't want to share those with people because you're afraid they'll think that you're a little bit crazy. And so she was able to identify for me what level of depression and anxiety that I had at that point in time, which was very severe. And in a few months, when I felt like I wasn't going anywhere and things weren't getting better for me. When we completed that scale again, and she sat down and she actually identified that I had actually improved, that was really exciting for me. I was like, wow, okay, something's actually happening here. My recovery was 1 to 2 years in the making, and I was unwell about 9 years ago. I still recover every day. I still live with anxiety every day. I'm traumatised by what I went through. It was an intense, extreme experience, and wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. But having this information provided to me in such a way was just one tiny small step in my recovery. I'm not saying it's the be-all and the end-all, but I am saying that it's important. And I think that that's the message that we need to get on the ground level to our clinical staff sometimes is, yes, CBT works and other therapy treatments work, talking to people works, getting people into group activities works. I did all those things too. Without those things, maybe I wouldn't have recovered, but there was this very small part of the information sharing between my clinician and I that was very useful to me as well. So what is recovery? We've all heard various definitions of recovery. The one that speaks to me the most is living well despite the symptoms of your illness, because I live well despite the symptoms of my illness every day. I had a migraine for the last 12 hours. And I didn't know if I was going to get up here at 2 o'clock today. Thankfully, my head's working again, and it's all clear after a quick trip to the doctors. But when I'm not well, my anxiety reaches its peak. And I'm lucky that I've been given the skills and I'm able to deal with those sorts of situations so that I can live well despite the symptoms. Can information help recovery? Absolutely. Absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind that if we use information properly, and particularly on the ground level, that it can absolutely facilitate the recovery process for our consumers and for our carers. I think it's really important. The one thing about information that speaks to me is that it includes people, and that we get to share and communicate with people by using information. And we're treating people like people. By giving them information that we're collecting about them, we're saying that, you know, you're important enough to have this information given back to you. Because I think sometimes, and this certainly, I didn't feel this clinically when I was unwell, but certainly from other people that didn't understand what was going on with me, is that it's like they forgot that I was a person. And at work, they wouldn't tell me things. Or, you know, we don't want to upset Lisa. And that's just, you know, that was so far from what I needed at that particular time. What you need at that time is people to be honest with you, and people to be open with you, and people to share with you. And information gives us the ability to do that. So in my job, as I said, I work with consumer outcome measures and perceptions of care measures. These are the two things that I know the most about, that I know can help facilitate the recovery process. I think that they're both really important because they involve both consumers and carers at all levels, and that if they're used properly, that they can facilitate that recovery process. When I go out and I talk to people in the services, I tend to hear a lot of excuses, and I think that that's probably fairly common for most people in this room if you're actually able to go out and talk to the services. I hear that consumers don't want to participate a lot, and I would actually challenge, and I do challenge clinicians when I feel like it, to show me one person that doesn't want to have a say about what is being done to them. I don't know about you, but certainly there were times where I felt like I couldn't participate, but that never meant that I didn't want to participate. And sometimes we need to keep going back to people. We need to keep asking people. We need to keep trying to involve people. We don't need to just stop and go, well, okay, well, since you've said this one time that you can't participate or you don't want to participate, that I'm not going to ask you again. And that was something that came up yesterday in the session that I was in, actually, is that sometimes we ask once and then we don't go back for more. And sometimes people just need to get through what they're getting through before they're willing to take that next step. I've actually had some clinical staff say to me that they refuse to ask clients to participate in outcomes, the consumer outcomes measure, because they've asked before and they've said no. And I say, but, you know, it's our job to ask. You don't have to force people to do it, but it's still our job to ask. One of the other excuses I hear a lot is that consumers are too unwell to participate. Well, I've been unwell, and I can tell you that I was never too unwell to not want to get better. And I think that if we ask our consumers if you're too unwell to want to get better, I think that they'd probably challenge that as well. They want to get better, and if we offer them some tools to get better, I think that you'll find that they will want to participate. But again, it comes back to what the information is that we're giving them. What information are we providing to people to want to participate? If I say to somebody, can you please complete this form? Can you complete this survey? And I've got to tell you, I hate it when people call consumer outcome measures surveys, because they're not surveys. It's a questionnaire about wellness. It's a questionnaire that informs their treatment, that can inform their recovery planning. And but it happens all the time, and people go, well, no, thank you. But if we offer it in such a way that we're telling people what it is, we're saying, you know, this is going to help you, and this is how we're going to use it, I think you'll find that we'll get a better response. And the other thing, and I think I sort of mentioned this before, is that, you know, we're just trying to help. Absolutely. Everybody is trying to help. That's what we're in the business of. I wouldn't have taken my job if I didn't think that I was going to help in some way. I love that what I get to do is I get to go to work every day, and I work towards making it a better system for our consumers and our carers. I mean, that's one of the most fabulous things, to go to work and actually say I get something out of that. I don't think I ever had that before I had this job, and that's a really exciting thing. But we need to help people by involving them. We need to help people by saying, you know, this is about you, you're a person, and we want to involve you and make this a better situation and a better outcome for you. The one thing that I do know, just to wrap up, and then I've got another cartoon, it's not Dilbert, it's more of a consumer cartoon that I like to show occasionally, is that I believe information gives us knowledge. A lot of people say knowledge gives us power, but I say in this case, knowledge can give us direction. And direction can lead to really good outcomes. It's quite interesting. Stigma is a really interesting thing. And for the first time the other week when I went to the doctors, I had never experienced it before, because I think I had my illness was what some people say, it was transitional. You know, I had one big experience and I got better from it. But I went to the doctors the other day, and I've been a bit tired lately. And my doctor said to me, have you spoken to your psychologist lately? And I said, no. And he said, oh, but you suffer from anxiety and stuff, don't you? I said, yeah. I'm not seeing you about that today. I'm tired. I'm really, really tired. And sometimes people forget that, you know, it's not just about the mental illness, that we are people. And that's all I have for you.